Where's my condenser mic? There we go. Condenser mic operational. Test, test, test. 1, 2, 3. Is that a little bit on the quiet side? How's the audio? Good morning to everyone. I see a few people. Excellent. Good to hear. I see a few people in here that I recognize. Nice to see you guys again. Hopefully your life hasn't been going too badly since the last time we had a class together. That might have been last week for some of you. Yeah. All right. Haha. Hello. Yes, indeed. Welcome, Fancy Meat Computers. We are going to be talking a lot about a lot of stuff today, so we should just get to it. No mercy for people who don't show up on time. So, welcome to Computer Science 1XC3 Software Development Basics. This is going to be a cool class. So, I just wanted to... I wanted to get sort of a feel for who is actually in this class right now. Is there anybody in the crowd right now who didn't have me for 1MD3? I've been teaching at 1MD3 for a couple of years now, so hypothetically, most of you should have had me, unless you're third or fourth year students who've come back to take it or something like that. So, is there anybody here who hasn't taken me, or not taken me, taken a course with me before? If you have taken a course with me before, then probably this will be reasonably familiar to you. I like to operate the courses I teach in a reasonably similar manner. So, you know, some of the procedures, like if everybody's taken a course with me, then I don't have to go over the procedures in quite so fine a detail. Perhaps, although I guess I should anyway for the benefit of people who might not be, who might not have taken a class with me, who might be not watching this concurrently. Pop out the chat. Chat is popped out. Aha! So, we do have some people. All right. You took Engineering 1D03. Well, welcome to computer science, or as we like to call it, the true path of noble existence. So, all right, well, we might as well get into the syllabus then. So, I should probably introduce myself. My name is Mr. Nicholas Moore. I will be your instructor this half semester. I hope that we will have a good time together. I'm a doctoral candidate in the Department of Computing and Software. Hopefully this summer I'm getting my PhD fixed up, stitched up, get everything together so I can stop saying I'm Mr. and start saying I'm Dr. Moore, you know. I don't really care. If you call me Dr. Moore, then that's fine, but I'm not. Anyway, I'll be having office hours this semester from 10:30 to 11:30 on Thursdays. So if you have any problems, or you have anything that you want to discuss, or you have a problem with the work, or anything like that, just drop by my office hours. I'm a really friendly guy, and you can talk to me there. So, congratulations to everybody who is here. You have successfully found the live streams. The lectures are going to be live streamed on this YouTube channel every Monday and Tuesday from 10:30 in the morning to 12. Well, actually, I kind of want to run them from 10:30 to 12:10 this semester. Normally, I give you guys a break in the middle where you would normally have the break in classes to, like, go to the bathroom or whatever. However, the way that the class has been scheduled this semester, which is, it's a little bit on the stupid side if you ask me, but, you know, I'm not the registrar. I don't know what sort of machinations are going on behind the scenes there. But we have 2 hours of lectures on Monday and Tuesday. Of course, this is a summer semester, so we're supposed to be doing 2 weeks of class for every week in this semester, right? So 2 weeks of regular class. So the way that this class normally operates is you have 2 hours lectures, 4 hours lab time. In this particular instance, they only scheduled this for 2 hours lecture and 2 hours lab time, and they run those directly adjacent to each other over top of lunch, at least with respect to people in a North American time zone. So, what I'd like to do is, normally I give you guys a 10-minute break at sort of every hour of lecture that I do. People who've been with me for 1MD3 will be familiar with this. I'm going to skip those breaks to be able to let you guys out 10 minutes early so that you might have 20 minutes during which you can heat up some pizza pockets, and so you can have some time in the middle of that session so that you can get some food in you so you can do your labs. Although I guess everything's online, so it hypothetically doesn't matter if you're eating a cheese sandwich at the same time as doing your lab these days, because, like, you know, normally in a lab in a regular lab setting, no food is allowed, but in this lab setting, your food is your office, and if you allow food in your office, then you get to eat in your office. Simple. So anyway, so that's how the lectures are going to be. Some of you may be worried by the fact that I have said there should be 4 hours of lab time per week. That actually translates to, we have been given 4 hours of lab time per week, but we should have 8. So what we're going to do, normally there are restrictions. You have to do the lab work inside of the lab time. But this semester, because the way things have been scheduled just didn't work out that way, and, you know, also kind of giving a nod to the fact that this is an online school type thing, we're going to be lifting the restrictions on you submitting the lab time during the lab time for obvious reasons. So we're going to be getting into this, but essentially the lab work will be due before class starts the week following the lab work being assigned. But again, we'll see this. We'll see this all out very plainly. So there are a number of important websites that we'll be using this semester. Number 1, obviously, is this YouTube channel. Number 2 is the Avenue page. So I'm going to be using Avenue primarily for 3 things: distribution of course content, including lecture slides and assignments, and lab work. So lectures, assignments, and lab work, all coming down to you through Avenue. The announcements feed on Avenue is my go-to way of giving you information for the course. You can think of this as being the official and complete announcements feed. If you keep on top of the Avenue announcements feed, you have all of the information you need for the course. And the official, well, we're not using Jupyter this semester for the 1MD3 crowd, so there's no, like, alternative place that the grades are going to be kept. Everything will be kept in Avenue. Things will be more Avenue-centric this time around. So, this is good. Any questions so far? Nope, that's good. So, We will also have a Piazza Forum. So if you've never used Piazza before, it's anonymized question and answer forum. So you post a question, and either myself or the TAs will give you the official instructor's answer. And students are also allowed to give you to compose their own answers, but the student answer and the instructor answer are visibly distinguished from each other, which can be very useful. So, and it allows follow-up discussions. I just really like Piazza. It's like 1,000 million times better than Avenue discussions, so Piazza will be the discussion forum. We are going to encourage people to use the Piazza Forum to ask any questions that might be interesting to anybody else in the class. So that's particularly stuff like procedural stuff related to, when do I hand stuff in, or, anything related to the actual content of labs or assignments. That's the Q&A area. Microsoft Teams, that will be used for office hours, backup lecture location, and when we are having lab sessions, they will occur over Microsoft Teams. Incidentally, there are no labs this week. Labs start next week. Good. If anybody has any questions about that, just throw those into the chat, and I'm just going to keep plugging on, because they've squeezed me down from 3 hours of lectures to 2-hour lectures, so I have to be a little bit more on top of things than I normally am. What is lab? Well, that is a good question. We're gonna get there. We have a whole section on the lab, so we'll talk about it. So let's talk though a little bit about this course and what the where did the labs occur? The labs will be on Teams. You will be expected to use your own computing devices to perform the labs, but the organization of the labs will occur on Microsoft Teams. Like, the intro to the lab will be given by your TA on Teams. So, this course, description. We will be acquiring familiarity with professional software development settings via practical experience and interaction with Unix-like systems, that means Linux, programming in C, with documentation, testing, benchmarking, profiling, and debugging, shell interaction and programming, pipes and filters, and revision control. 2 lectures, 2 labs, 2 hours each. We shall have, so prerequisites, you should have taken either Comp Sci 1MD3 or Engineering 1D04. Anti-requisites are basically courses that do the same thing in Comp Eng and Software Eng. These are sometimes C courses, these are sometimes experience courses. And interestingly, Comp Sci 1XA3. So this course, this 1XC3, is an interesting one. Let me answer questions about how to the question, do I need to download Linux? Short answer, no, but it's recommended. Also, Linux isn't well, unless you're doing the Linux subsystem for Windows, it's not exactly a download, it's an operating system installation. So, you're not required to install a new operating system. However, it's an extremely useful and good exercise. So if you want to go about it, if you have like an old computer lying around somewhere, and you want to try installing Linux on it, 100% support that idea. That might be, you would probably find it useful during this class. Especially if you're a person who tends to have connectivity issues with respect to the VPN. But that's sort of, we're jumping ahead. Let me get back to where I was. So this course was created out of a desire to have the computer science people get more co-op oriented skills earlier on in their degree program so that they could apply for co-ops and get them after first year. So essentially, this is the course 1XA3, which used to be taught by Curtis D'Alves. He ran this course that was like Linux skills in combination with web development. That course got split in two. The Linux skills stuff got combined with a C course, and that's the course you're taking right now. So we're going to be talking about Linux development skills in combination with C development skills. Is it possible to install Linux in Mac OS? If you're in Mac OS, you don't need to install Linux because Mac OS is already a Unix-like system. So all of the fun stuff that we're going to be doing in Linux, you will have access to in Mac OS or other Macintosh environments because you're already Unix-based, although you may not have realized it. So somewhere in your computer, you will be able to access Terminal, and you'll be able to follow along with all of the stuff that we're going to be doing. Cool. So anyway, this is kind of a weird Frankensteinish course because it's gonna feel very much like two half courses that have been smucked together. Uh-oh. Have I lost uh-oh. Come on. Come on. I was having these problems. I had fixed these problems last semester. I don't know why they're occurring again. That's very frustrating. There we go. All right. Thank you. If ever there's just a problem with the problem, that's like a recurring thing with the mic and the camera. If it happens, just let me know in the chat and I'll fix it. So do you need to know the Linux stuff, or is it more just an overview? It's kind of the traditional problem that you have with computer science courses. If you already know this stuff, it will be a very easy course for you. If you don't know anything about Linux, then you're going to learn. This course assumes no knowledge of Linux. All right? So we're going to bring you up. We're going to build you up. All of you poor, helpless Windows users out in the cold of your inferior operating system shivering, saying, "Oh, Microsoft, please give me one more system update that takes literally 3 days to execute." No, we're going to take you guys from not knowing anything about Linux to being Linux pros, all in the course of 7 weeks. So I hope you guys are ready, because I am going to blow your minds with Linux. So, these are good questions, by the way. So, by the end of this course, students will be expected to, A, implement C programming languages utilizing concepts such as dynamic memory allocation, pointers, and number representations, understand the stack and heap memory models, test, benchmark, profile, and debug computer programs, document computer programs with comments, literate programming, and tools such as Doxygen. We're going to create and use makefiles to compile programs. Don't worry if you don't know what these words mean. That's the purpose of the course, is to teach you what these words mean. Use pipes and filters to connect programs together. Use modern revision control tools to manage changes to computer programs. Create shell scripts and use shell commands to conduct work, and access machines remotely using tools such as SSH. Considering you're learning C, do you need Visual Studio? I would recommend, no. Try to stay away from Visual Studio. Because this is a Linux programming course, the ideal is that you're going to be developing C in a Linux-like environment. All right, a Unix-like environment. So that means command lines and text editors, my friends. Command lines and text editors. So let me talk a little bit about the philosophy behind this course, right? So this is what the department would like it to be, is an experiential course. So the idea is We're not. This is going to be focusing primarily on getting you guys to actually use the tools that we're talking about. We're not going to talk about Doxygen and then never expect you to use it. We're going to talk about Doxygen and then you're going to be expected to use it. This is an experiential course, so you're to get experience using the tools we talk about. One of the first ones we're going to talk about actually is version control using GitHub. We're going to get there. The more observant of you may have noticed that GitHub usernames have been included with the information for all of the teaching staff for this course, and there's a reason for that. Question: can virtual machine be used for Linux? Yes. If you wish to use a virtual machine to spoof a Linux distribution, that is 100% an excellent idea. If you've got the system resources for it, Linux is usually pretty light. We don't need you to have any particular Linux distribution. We're kind of jumping ahead. I'm going to talk about this stuff when we get into the first actual lecture. But yeah, having Linux in a virtual box, that would be, or a VMware, or whichever virtual machine software is your preferred one. That would be a cool way to do that. Highly recommended. Yeah, so. Right, where were we? Now for the bit everybody wants to know about. Evaluation and assessment. Labs are 40%, assignments are 30%, and the final exam is 30%. You may notice that there is no midterm included here. We are not going to have a midterm. We are going to have labs, an assignment, 2 assignments, actually, and a final exam. So, yeah. So, yeah, well, I don't know. I have I'm going to make you a moderator so everybody knows you're a TA. There we go. So, I don't know, actually. It might be useful to have a something on virtual machines. We'll see. To some degree, I've got a certain amount of latitude in the topics that I get to cover with this course, as long as I'm covering the basics or covering all the stuff I need to cover. So we'll see. Maybe we'll get to VMs, but certainly not early enough for it to be useful to you. So if you want to get Linux using a virtual machine, I would recommend just doing that. Where can you find the syllabus? The syllabus is on Avenue under Content. Overview. Ta-da! Right there. So, labs. Due to the online nature of labs this semester, laboratory exercises which would normally be performed under direct TA supervision will now occur on your own personal computers. It is therefore your responsibility to ensure that you have the necessary equipment and software to complete the lab activities. Lab activities will be introduced by your lab TA during your scheduled laboratory session. You must have your lab exercises completed and handed in by the dates indicated in the following table. So, this is a tentative list of topics and dates that things are due. If you took 1XC3 last in the winter term and had to drop it or something, this will be very different from the way that Dr. Brown ran this in the winter semester. We are going to be moving back to the idea of like more structured lab exercises. The way he was using labs was basically as like live coding tutorials. So we're going to be shifting us back towards what the department's priorities are for this course. So, the topics in general will be Unix basics, the Unix file system, version control using Git, shell scripting, benchmarking and profiling, shared object libraries in C, makefiles, testing and test benches, documentation, and pipes, filters, and regular expressions. So we're gonna and their due dates all listed here, relevant to the current semester. Again, labs do not start until next week. So, assignments. There will be 2 assignments focusing on C programming. The release dates and deadlines for submission of these assignments is indicated in the course timeline for Section 4 of this document, so the syllabus. Assignments will be graded using automatic grading software. Assignment materials will be submitted through GitHub. The assignments will include instructions for submission. So, everything, labs, assignments, and the final exam, these are all going to be submitted through GitHub. It is the expectation of this course that you sign up for a GitHub account. If you haven't done so, if you don't have one already, you're going to need one, so you should just get one. You're going to make a private repository that has folders for all of the things that we're doing in this course. Don't worry, there are documents that'll tell you how to do this. This is just a rough overview. And then when you've made this repository, you'll email the details of it to Mark, and Mark will collect. He'll make a repository of his own that links to all of your repositories, and that's how we're going to collect all of your information, is by uploading it directly from GitHub. Using version control software is one of the stated goals of the one of the goals of this course, is to get you guys familiar with version control software. So seems like it would be a good thing for experience-wise for you to need to use it to submit your assignments. So that's what we're going to do. Again, if you have questions about how GitHub works, please, we have a whole lecture on it, so, you know, you don't have to have it immediately, just, you know, keep in mind it's coming up. So, the final exam will occur at the end of the semester, again indicated in the timeline. The exam will be in take-home format and distributed through Avenue. The exam is open book, but collaboration between students on test questions is strictly forbidden. You will have 24 hours to complete the exam. The exam will be cumulative. If you've not done a test or an exam with me before, essentially how it works is I release the test at 9 a.m. on the day of the test. You have however much time you think you need within a 24-hour period to complete and submit that work. At the end of the 24-hour period, you done, son. No more submissions will be accepted. When should we be added to the labs team group? Again, the labs are going to be starting up next week, so at some point this week we'll make the team and we'll get everybody in it. And, you know, just pay attention to the announcements feed. Okay? So yeah. You have 24 hours to complete it. The idea here is that if there is anybody in the room who is in different time zones, you are not disadvantaged for not being in North America via this grading scheme. Oh, did it? Oh, thank you. Jeez. This is so annoying. I wish I knew what was causing it. There we go. So, thank you. So, yeah. With respect to the MSAF policy, invoking an MSAF for either an assignment or a laboratory exercise results in a 3-day extension for the assignment. This is different from the policy in 1MD3. For the final exam, standard university policy will be applied, the policy on deferred examinations. MSAFs must be submitted online. If you require an accommodation beyond the scope of an MSAF-related policy, please email the instructor. Be advised that the instructor reserves the right to refuse such requests. If you have an SAS accommodation, please get those letters in so that we know what we're dealing with. Okay? So, course timeline. The instructor reserves the right to modify the information stated below as particular circumstances arise, such as, global deadly pandemic breakouts and stuff like that. Completely improbable events like complete worldwide shutdown due to contagious viruses. So, the last day of classes is August 6th. We're going to have 2 lectures a week. This is a very I might have to play with this a little bit, so this isn't set in stone, but certainly the first 4 will be basically there. Most important information here is the week in which assignment 1 and 2 are released and the times at which they are due. So that should be of interest to you. And we're going to be having the final exam on August 7th, which is a Saturday. I hold tests on Saturdays during the summer, particularly because people work. And when people work, it's less likely they work on a Saturday, so Saturdays. Also, if you are working this Saturday, this should be enough time for you to reschedule or schedule something else if you're working shift work or something. So anyway, for individuals with testing accommodations, extra time will be allotted in accordance with your accommodation plan. Students requiring accommodations must be registered with the Office of Student Accessibility Services. Accommodation testing will be performed in accordance with the relevant McMaster University policy documents. So basically, if you've got like a 50% exam writing time accommodation, then you get an extra 12 hours based on a 24-hour writing block, essentially. But we'll be emailing you to remind you about that as the exam comes up. Yeah. So textbooks. There's no textbook. This course does not have a required textbook. All course materials will be distributed through Avenue. If you just have this insatiable urge to buy a textbook, where is it? Where did I put it? Did I put it over here? Well, anyway, it's Deedle and Deedle's oh, there it is. How to Program C 8th edition. Give me a second. So, in general, most C programming textbooks would be just fine for use as additional resources during this class. This is the book upon which the C lectures have been loosely based in this particular class. The only reason I have this textbook, which is not even the most recent edition of this series, is because it includes several chapters on C++ programming, and that was necessary for a different course. Not this one. We're not going to be talking about. Well, we'll probably talk about C++, but we won't do any C++. So yeah, good textbook if you like textbooks and you want to buy a textbook, but of course it's expensive and you don't need to. So why would you? But yeah. For the rest of the topics in this course, your reference material will be the documentation for the various tools as published on the internet. So, if we're using Git, the Git documentation is on the web, so you should read that if you need any additional reference. So, we have set up a Piazza Forum. I forgot to put the link down there, but I think I put the link up here. Yeah, there we go. So, there's the link to the Piazza. I already talked about it, where students may ask questions and receive answers from our instructional team or their peers in a somewhat organized manner. please, 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 with the Piazza Forum, check to see if someone else has had your problem before posting your question. It saves everybody a lot of work. Like, you don't have to wait however long it takes us to answer your question to get the answer to your question. It'll just be there. So it's like 0 seconds response time, which would be excellent. Yeah, just, give a quick scan through the questions on Piazza to make sure that nobody's asked your question first. That's kind of the whole point of the forum. So yeah, but anyway, if you have questions like I don't know what I'm doing wrong here, or asking clarification about this, that, or the other, Piazza is an excellent resource, and it'll have the fastest response times of any of the ways of getting into contact with people. So, generally speaking, fast response times are the best, so that's the way that we want to do it. For more private inquiries, please feel free to ask questions during laboratory sessions. Swing by, my office hours. I'm not giving the TA's office hours this semester. Or email anybody on the delivery team. So, okay. Academic integrity. You are expected to exhibit honesty and use ethical behavior in all aspects of the learning process. Academic credentials that you earn are rooted in principles of honesty and academic integrity. Academic dishonesty is to knowingly act or fail to act in such a way that results or could result in unearned academic credit or advantage. This behavior can result in serious consequences. For example, a grade of 0 on an assignment, loss of credit with a notation on the transcript, or expulsion or suspension from the university itself, normally in the case of repeated offenses. It is your responsibility to understand what constitutes academic dishonesty. Your responsibility, not mine. If you do it, you don't... basically, ignorance of the law is no defense against it. For information on the various types of academic dishonesty, please refer to the academic integrity policy located at this link. The following illustrates only 3 forms of academic dishonesty. Blah, 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 etc., etc. In this course, we'll be using a web-based service, MOS, to interrogate the authenticity and ownership of student-submitted work. MOS is a system developed specifically for detecting plagiarism in programming code, and is tuned to the specific ways in which code is plagiarized. MOS generates a plagiarism report in which pairs of submissions are given a similarity score, the highest of which is tabulated into a report. Submissions which have a high degree of similarity and then examined manually for plagiarism are dealt with accordingly. Don't be fooled. Contrary to public opinion, a person's code is as unique to them as an essay would be. The argument, well, there's only one way to solve a problem, will be dealt with by the swift wings and iron, zero-giving fist of electronic justice. Students who do not wish their work to be submitted through plagiarism detection software must inform the instructor before the assignment is due. No penalty was fined to students who do not submit their work to plagiarism detection software. All submitted work is subject to normal verification and standards of academic integrity has been held. For more details about McMasters and use of Turnitin.com, please go to URL address. There you go. Don't cheat. Also, don't put the exam questions up on Chegg because I'm onto you. I gave people zeros last in 1MD3 this summer semester because they thought it would be clever to put their test questions up on Chegg and ask someone to help them with it. Well, let me tell you, Sonny ma'am, if you use that, I will catch you. I will find you and I will zero you. And this is an exam we're talking about, so that's a pretty serious thing. All right? Anyway, so we're using Piazza. It's third-party software. Be aware of that. We're not going to be using online proctoring. We have expectations of your conduct. Basically, do not be butthole to people and everything's fine. If you need academic accommodations, please get of any type. If you have like any SAS-related stuff, please send me those now. If you need any accommodation for religious, indigenous, or spiritual observances, then please just let me know. In particular, like as an example of that, I have this nasty habit of booking all of my tests on the Sabbath. So my any students I have who happen to be Jewish need some accommodation in that respect, which I'm happy to provide. I just need to know about it, right? It's all about communication. So yeah. Anyway, the rest of this is just boilerplate stuff, so we can just move right along, I think. If there are any questions about this syllabus or the course in general, please put them into the chat now while I load up our first lecture slides. Ba-ba-ba-bum. Yeah, everything seems good. No questions? Everybody's got a good idea? Okay. Oh, I should also explain about these lectures. So, these are live streamed as unlisted videos on YouTube, primarily to prevent trolls from, and like bots and stuff from getting in, and so the chat is actually the people who I'm interested in hearing from. So, essentially, they're unlisted right now, but once the lecture has concluded, I make my videos public so that you can, view them anytime you like, so you don't have to be present at the time. This, I think, will be implicit to some degree in the fact that they're YouTube videos. So yeah, if you want to participate in the lecture component of this course asynchronously, that is your choice. If you wish to participate in the labs asynchronously, you will well, that one's a little trickier. I'll come up with a policy on that and tell you a little bit later on. But I'm kind of leaning towards you should be able to do the labs asynchronously because this is a summer course and it's in the middle of the day, so probably this has been scheduled over time. A lot of you are probably working, so, So anyway, certainly, it's the fact that the labs are detached from you needing to submit during the lab certainly helps that along. But, yeah. So, no questions then. Alright. Good. So, I would appreciate if, at least a few of you kept up with watching these lectures concurrently, though. It's really helpful to people to have things explained to them. And, I'm going to be going through it, as the lecturer. I'm not going to know what questions people have until somebody asks one. So, the idea that you have some, input on what's talked about is extremely crucial, and in order for that to happen, at least some people need to actually be here at the time. So, yeah. Could I post any videos from the labs after they're done on Teams? Yeah, we'll see. I think you can record the session, and then maybe I'll have them put it up either... I hate Microsoft videos. Passionately, I hate it. What I might do is I might ask the TA to upload it to a their YouTube channel, rather than just have it hang out on Teams. But yeah, that's a reasonable process. Yeah, the intro I think at least should be put up there. I don't think, yeah, once you're done, yeah. Anyway, I'll talk about it. This is the first time I'm running this course, so yeah. There'll be some kinks to iron out, but that's okay, because as long as we're all just paying attention and willing to address problems and, make things better as we go along, then hopefully everything works out. Anyway, so let's talk topic 1, shell basics. We're not going to be talking about oysters or mussels. We're talking about computers, computer shells. So, we'll start off with a brief history of computing. We will then talk about operating systems, bash, network protocols, and then we have some errata. So, it all started back in the 1950s. In the beginning, computers were very large, requiring large rooms for their housing. This is a picture of Leo, England's first commercially available computer from 1951. You can see you've got banks of computing devices. Like, cabinets were the appropriate mechanism of storage, right? And you would have these terminals that you would actually use to type, make requests, program stuff. You'll notice these floor panels. You'd be able to lift those up, and you'd see all the wires that were connecting all of these various components together. So, while this seems archaic, this is basically the same way that computers still work. It's just been miniaturized. So, semiconductor electronics for the win. The semiconductor transistor, which was invented in the late 40s but took some time to become popular, is possibly the most important invention of the 20th century. I include in that the atomic bomb. I will fight you on that. The exponential growth of the number of transistors per unit area over time meant that by the mid-70s, the home or personal computer began outpacing the mainframe in terms of computational power. So you can see, in the 50s, we had 1 transistor, 60s, 16, 4,500 by the 70s, and so on and so forth, until we hit the 2010s, and we're at like 8 billion transistors in the space that in the 50s you would have 1. Like, that's an incredible feat of engineering. We're kind of hitting a limit, though. If you didn't know this about processors, we're kind of hitting we're hitting the physical limitations of how small you can make things. One big problem that they're having with processors these days is a phenomenon called electron tunneling, which is electrons. The gaps between the wires have become so thin that the insulating plastic, or whatever it is not sufficiently wide to stop electrons jumping across the insulation from one wire to the other. So we are in fact hitting physical limits on how small we can make the electronics right now. So it's kind of broken Moore's law, which is interesting, because if Moore's law had continued, in 20 years, you probably would have seen all of the ridiculous artificial intelligence that they talk about in science fiction magazines. So, around this time, that is to say, around the 1970s, you had, a question. Isn't quantum computing supposed to fix our problems with really small transistors? Yes. The problem with quantum computing, though, is that quantum computing requires quantum isolation. Let's just say it's unlikely that we'll be able... the problem with quantum computing is that you have to worry about quantum effects, like there's this one effect in quantum mechanics where observing something forces it into one state or another, and when it's not observed, it's in multiple states at once. That's the Schrodinger's cat problem. So in order for something to not be observed, it has to be isolated very, very, very strictly. So quantum computing like you need a hell of a lot of equipment, and you need things like liquid helium cooling, and like it's advanced science. And the idea that they're going to make a laptop that can do it in our lifetimes, pretty slim in my opinion. But yeah, in theory, quantum computing breaks. Quantum computing breaks encryption. In theory, all existing encryption would be broken by quantum computing. So, we'll see. We'll see. We're not talking about that in this course, though. We're talking about conventional electronics. Or the quantum computing, you can't even call it electronics anymore, because it's not operating on electrons. So, anyway. So, around the time of the 1970s, there was an explosion in computer manufacturing, with different vendors having very different processor architectures. Basically, transistors became cheap and plentiful, and as a consequence, everybody and their monkey was making a home computer. So, programs which were written at this time, most notably using languages such as Fortran, COBOL, and Lisp, were not generally portable between machine architectures. So, you can imagine manufacturer A and manufacturer B both make a computer. A program that you wrote for manufacturer A's computer, you could not port it to manufacturer B's computer because there was no standardization that had been set up between these guys. A lack of strong standardization meant that many vendors included language extensions that were incompatible with other vendors' machines. So it's like, manufacturer A would put, Fortran plus like 3 extra language features that manufacturer B would not have. If anybody used the language features that were extra, they couldn't cross-compile code. This was a big problem, because if you can't spread your software to many computers, basically you have an inhibition to the mass marketing and mass distribution of software, which you may have noticed with respect to the modern age that we've solved that problem. We definitely mass market software now. So, what changed this was the development of C in 1972 by Dennis Ritchie at Bell Labs, which was a subsidiary of AT&T, which is a telephone company. Because C was strongly standardized, C programs could be ported across participating computer architectures with no compatibility issues. So you could write your C program, and anybody who had a C compiler could compile that program and execute that on their computer, and everything would be fine. C programs were highly portable across architectures. And that's because they were like, okay, this does this, that does that, and they put it all on a document, and they gave it to people, and they said, listen, if you don't do it like this, we are not going to give you C. And C is becoming a popular language, so you probably just want to implement it like this. So, C is interesting because it was originally developed for writing utilities for the Unix operating system. So, C and Unix were co-developed to some extent. So when we're studying Unix, studying C at the same time makes a lot of sense, historically speaking. So, Unix, the Uniplexed Information and Computing Service. Unix. Unix is it's the granddaddy of most of the computer operating systems that are currently existing. So, it's extremely important. Unix was originally written in assembly code, but after the development of C, the Bell Labs gang began re-implementing the Unix kernel in C, and it has remained in C ever since. So it was like they had assembly code, because every computer has an assembly code, right? They built up C, and the C compiler, using the assembly code, once they had access to C, they were like, you know what? This kernel is terrible, because if we wrote the kernel in C, then the kernel itself would be portable across architectures. So you are witnessing the birth of computer operating systems that are portable across hardware architectures, which, like, I can't even begin to describe to you what an important innovation that was in the history of computing. Like, these guys, like, it's Nobel Prize worthy stuff, I'm telling you. Anyway, so due to its low cost and high portability, especially to low-cost hardware, because it was written in C, Unix was widely adopted by academic institutions, and from there the world, because everybody knows that anything that academic institutions do, 5 to 10 years later, everybody else is doing. So, Unix had some very key innovations, and I just want you to think. I want you to try to think about an operating system that doesn't have these features, okay? An hierarchical file system with arbitrarily nested subdirectories. So, file folders in a file system. It didn't happen before Unix. The universalization of almost all file formats as new line delimited plaintext. So the fact that you can actually read most files as characters, Unix. A pervasive philosophy of modularity and code reuse, and the establishment of a set of cultural norms for software development practice. So, the idea that functions should be reusable. This should give you some indication of how important this stuff is. Anyway, so this is the Unix family. I'm going to blow this up. You don't have to memorize this or anything. It's just, I just wanted to show you guys how influential Unix has been. So Unix, you know, you had some key branches back in the 70s, late 70s. BSD was one of them. Linux was developed in 91 and is the one that we're probably going to be focusing primarily on. But you've got all kinds of stuff like FreeBSD, NetBSD, OpenBSD, Solaris, Sun Solaris. The green stuff here is open source, the red stuff is closed source, and the orange is mixed. Mac OS, notice that there is a family history of Mac OS being a Unix-derived operating system. So because Mac is Unix-derived, as I informed one of your colleagues earlier, many of the utilities that we're talking about that are applicable to Linux will also work in Mac. You just need to know how to get to them or what they've been renamed. Okay? So. Cool. So, choosing an OS. Do you fear technology? Yes. Is your daddy rich? Yes. Then you will use a Mac. No? Then you will use a Chrome. Do you fear technology? No. Do you care about freedom or privacy? No. Then you will use Windows. Yes? Then, do you have a life? Yes? Use Ubuntu, Debian, or Fedora. No? Use Arch Linux, Gentoo, or I'm not sure what all of those are, but there are Linux there are Linux distros that are very, very for advanced Linux users. If you're one of these guys who are in the chat who are talking about getting a Linux in a virtual machine, or if you're even planning on doing a operating system installation, if you've never used Linux before, I recommend using one of the common distributions, one of the popular common distributions. Personally, right here, I'm running a Ubuntu. You see? Ubuntu. So Ubuntu is... It used to be the most popular Linux distribution. These days, I believe it's Mint. I haven't tried Mint. I'm actually planning my next computer. I think I'm gonna try Mint out. But yeah. So steer clear of Gentoo or Arch Linux for now. Once you are Linux masters, then you will have perhaps you'll have the fortitude, the Linux fortitude to be able to take on such a task. So, there's also kind of a strong, there's a strong culture of figure it out yourself to some degree in Linux. Like, that's not true to some, like, people are always willing to help, but the help can often be in the form of, did you read the manual? Right? So this is Linux in general, especially, you know, if you're going for some of the more, some of the higher skill cap Linux distributions, shall we say. There's a thing of, like, did you read the manual? Right? So yeah. Anyway, so let's talk about operating systems. No, I'm going to pontificate on Linux for just a little bit longer. So, like, in Linux, oh, what was I going to say? I forgot. What was I talking about? Culture of reading manuals. I completely forgot what I was going to say. Alright, that's fine. We'll just move on then. So, operating systems then. An operating system provides a collection of services to user applications, allowing them to run on a computer's system's hardware. User applications are anything from internet browsers to word processors to solitaire. Basically, the things that you use on your computer. The API, or Application Programming Interface, provides system libraries and other utilities via system calls. These are typically executed by the kernel. In C, these are the things that would be contained in your libraries. Things like printf and scanf. So, you've got users, you've got application programs. These are running over top the API. The API is using the operating system kernel and kernel utilities. The kernel is using hardware device drivers, and the device drivers are using the hardware itself. The kernel is like the nugget in the middle of the operating system. Operating systems include a kernel, which manages access to memory, random access and read-only memory, access to the CPU. So the kernel handles, like, how much, which process, pardon me, which processes get how much of the system's resources. It handles input and output, so what is actually displayed on the screen versus what wants to be displayed on the screen. That is, like, the kernel manages the communication between the operating, like, okay, example. I'm showing you this PDF inside of this little window, right? Most people identify the program with the window. But that's because they don't understand computers very well, not at a deep level. This guy is just, it's just the user interface for a process, right? So the only reason they see this user interface is because the application itself is sending information down through the shell it's operating in, which in this particular case, when you have one of these guys open and you open a thing, when you open a PDF from the file system, you're opening a shell session there, or using an existing shell session in order to do so. Everything gets opened through a shell. It's just a matter of whether you can see that shell or not. The shell is talking to the kernel is talking to the hardware is showing you your thing. It's displaying the window for you. That now, you know, if you don't understand that, then you get the people who, like, when their computer fouls up, they punch their monitor. It's like, the monitor is not the problem. If you plugged in a different monitor, you would have the same problem. But people tend to, like, localize the information visually. But that's okay. Good enough for the normies, right? That's going to be our catchphrase this semester. Good enough for the normies. So anyway, most operating systems use C for their kernels because C is fast. C is one of the fastest programming languages. And the reason it's a fast programming language is because it does practically nothing for you. It's just instructions. Python has all kinds of stuff that it's running in the back end to be like, oh no, I don't know, is that integer big enough for the operations that you're gonna be doing on it? I don't know, we'll keep track. I gotta keep track of that. Give you more memory if you make that thing longer than it should be. I gotta give you more memory for it. Like Python that's what Python is doing in the back end. What C does in the back end is like, oh, so you have an integer. You want to perform operations on it? Done. Did it work? Okay, C program that I wrote. Did I actually have enough room to perform that calculation inside of that integer? C's like, I don't know. You should have checked that, man. Who am I? Am I your mom? That I have to check all of your calculations for you? That's the attitude that C takes towards it. Yes, that's what I was going to say. So, in general, the attitude that both C and Unix and Linux have towards you, the operator of the system, is they are assuming that you know what you're doing at all points in time. Programming languages like Python try to protect you from the details and protect you from your own stupidity to some extent. Linux does not protect you from your own stupidity. It is possible in Linux to destroy your computer with about 7 characters, 5 more if you have to, given that you have to add sudoing privileges to delete your operating system. But once you have entered your password, because you are entering sudoing privileges, you can delete your entire operating system in one line in Linux. It doesn't care. If you mess up your computer, that's your problem, not Linux's problem. Linux gives you the tools, and if you goof it up, that's your bad. That's your problem. And C has a similar attitude towards you. It's like, my program doesn't work. Help me, C. And C's like, no. Figure it out, man. Can't you see I got an operating system to run here? So, anyway, are things cool so far? Give me a thumbs up if you're following along well. So, yeah. All right. I'll give you just a moment for the questions to come in if there are questions. Okay. Got a thumbs up. You can assume for the rest of this course that if I ask for questions and you don't have a question, thumbs up, please. Wonderful. Good. All right. So, Linux then. Linux is a family of free operating systems. Unix was free until, or essentially free, until 1984 when AT&T divested itself of Bell Labs. Unix then became proprietary software, which meant they got to start charging for it. This led to the creation of the GNU project and the GNU General Public License in 1989, which kicked off the open source movement. So you may have heard about open source software and thought, oh, it's free software. Why would anybody make their software free? Presumably it takes time and energy and resources to produce software products. How is it that people, can give their software away for free and still make a living? Well, it turns out that people can actually make money off of open source software. It's actually possible to charge for open source software, but generally speaking, people don't. And it also, a lot of open source software a lot of it gets developed not because it's a consumer product, but because it's sort of software that some big company like Intel or AMD or Bell or AT&T, one of these big companies, they will develop something that they need internally. They'll pay people to do it, and like the value to them is the software that they've developed, and then they'll release it under an open source license because people. So the thing about an open source project, what makes it open source, is that everybody can see the code, and anybody who wants to can contribute to the code. That's a big difference. So, if you are using, LibreOffice or OpenOffice, one of these, or let's talk about Ubuntu. Ubuntu is open source. So if you see Ubuntu, and you're like, you know what, I would really love it if it had this feature. This feature seems to be missing. You can add that feature to Ubuntu. They'll sort of, the people who are sort of the main contributors will decide whether your addition to it is any good and whether it should be included in in further updates of the operating system. But yeah, so basically anybody who is sufficiently interested in, say, the Linux kernel can contribute to it. Which means that you can distribute the amount of effort that it takes to create these operating systems across the entire world, which is an extremely, you're drawing upon the talent of the entire world to bring these things into existence, which is cool. But yeah, open source software is open source is not just it's not just an attitude towards licensing. It is a manner of software development. It is a model of software development, and it's and we're gonna be talking about it because it's basically GitHub. Like the GitHub workflow is a good example of one specific instance of the general open source workflow, which works pretty well even if you're not using even if it's not open source software. Anyway, so the Linux kernel was written in 1991 by Linus Torvalds at the University of Helsinki. Today, Linux has the largest install base of any operating system, although only about 2% of personal computers run it. Does anybody want to hazard a guess how Linux can be the largest installed operating system, and yet only 2% of personal computers have it installed as the native operating system? I'll leave you guys. I'll let you guys have a. I'll let you guys puzzle that one out. So let's give it a bash. In Linux distributions, command line interfaces are still commonly used. This is gonna be a big shocker for you Windows guys out there, possibly you Mac guys out there too. So, command lines are still in use because they have a very high skill cap compared to graphical user interfaces. It is possible to do more in less time in a command line interface than with any GUI. Corporations or universities? Nope. Although actually that would contribute. That contributes, but no, I'm looking for like specific applications. The things people use computers for that they use Linux for. Good guess though. So the bash environment, the bash shell is very common. It's a very common command line interface in Unix-like environments. So, in Windows, if you want to get a bash shell, you've got a couple of options. If you've got Windows 10, you have access to the Windows subsystem for Linux. So, if you just Google install Windows subsystem for Linux, you'll get instructions on how to do that. That's If you're running Windows 10, that's a good alternative to running a VM. Self uninstall by messing up. Nope. Okay, I'll just tell you. The reason that Linux is used, it has the largest install base, is because servers pretty much universally use Linux, and Android, the Android operating system for mobile phones, is Linux. So that's why. Cool. So on Macintoshes, opening up a terminal, and you have to enter the command bash. So on your Mac, if you search terminal, you'll probably find a terminal, like, again, if you don't know how to get a terminal on Mac, Google it, and once you're in the terminal, type bash, and that'll bring you to a bash shell. If you have a Linux operating system, do you have to ask? This course will require you to have ready access to a bash prompt. Your homework this week is to get your computer set up so that you have access to a bash prompt. We're gonna also, okay, so I believe that the preferred way of going about this is to have a bash shell running natively on your system, no matter what that system is. If you can't get that, we've set up a server that you guys can log into, which we'll be covering later on in this lecture. I'll be showing when we talk about network protocols. I'll tell you how to access the server using a graphical user interface client called Putty from Windows. And then you can have a bash prompt, but it's on the computer server, so you need to have a VPN connection to be able to do it, and not everybody can maintain a VPN connection. So, yeah. There are also instructions on how to do that on Avenue. So, accessing Linux from older Windows computers. We have set up a server. Oh, okay. Sometimes I'll do this where I'll say my slide before I get to my slide. We have set up a server for you to log into if the options on the previous slide don't work. Remote servers are accessed using Secure Shell Protocol, also known as SSH. On Windows, it is common to use a Secure Shell client, such as Putty. You may access it from this web link. The department has set up a server for the class to use this semester. For more information on how to access it, check out the resources section of the course content on Avenue. Always remember to log out when you're finished. Unfortunately, I can't run the VPN and live stream at the same time, but I'll show you what the command looks like. So, for any Linux users out there, I have a program installed called Gwake, which allows me to, basically I have one of my keyboard buttons mapped to bringing a terminal up, so all I have to do is hit one button and I get my terminal. But this, when you see me working in this thing, this is a bash prompt. So this is the bash prompt that I'm going to be using to demonstrate stuff to you throughout this course. If you see the dollar sign, you are in a bash prompt, and any of the commands that I'm entering will work for you. This will not work, for example, if you're trying to use Windows PowerShell or something like that. Windows PowerShell has different commands than bash. Different shells have different commands. That's what distinguishes them as shells. So make sure you're using a bash shell. So anyway, SSH, Pascal, pascal.cas.mcmaster.ca. I'm going to get a timeout because I'm not on the VPN. But that's the... So, you enter that in. Oh, wait, no, I'm sorry. You have to do your username at moorenc@pascal.cas.mcmaster.ca. That's my Mac ID. And if you enter that, then eventually it'll, if it successfully connects to the server, you'll get prompt for your password. It's just your Mac ID, so we shouldn't need to set you up with it beforehand. By logging into it for the first time, it'll create your account. So we don't need to, we don't have accounts set up for you. It'll be by logging in that creates the account. But interestingly, with it this way, if you take pascal.cast.mcmaster.ca and if you make a public HTML page inside of this server, then you will actually also have a web page that you can play with. We're not going to actually do any web development during this course, but that's, I don't know, maybe just you want a web page. Maybe you want a web page. You can have a web page. I give you a web page. You can have it for free. But only because you're a student. Anyway. So, let's talk about bash commands. Almost all Unix and Unix-like systems support a comprehensive set of bash commands. If you want the full list, you can go to Wikipedia. Bash commands are extremely versatile. The output of one command can be made the input of another command using pipes and filters, a topic in this course. Bash commands can be collected into scripts and executed as units, a topic of this course. Bash commands can be invoked from programs written in C or Python, which we'll cover at some point during this course. Oh, yes, and that's what that says at the bottom. So, you've written Python scripts. You will learn how to write scripts in the command language of the shell itself, which is going to be fun. They're a little bit weird. The syntax for them is strange. So we're not gonna use a whole bunch of really advanced features, but definitely enough to get you like, okay, I know how to go from here. So anyway, let's talk about the directory structure. The directory structure of Linux is hierarchical. Directories may contain files and subdirectories, forming a tree. So, if you guys took 1MD3 and you remember us talking about binary search trees, like the structure of a tree, that is what that type of hierarchical organization is what files do in your file system. This is the same way as things work in Windows. It's that plus shortcuts in Windows. So, in Bash, commands are executed within the working or active directory. So this is a very, very, very important point to understand about working on a command line. If I go to my documents folder, the commands that I am executing are now being, let me go a little bit further in here and pull up 1XC3 and go into the code folder. Do I have a code folder? No. Okay, so here's your first, here's a Linux command. Make dir creates a directory, and then you can go into it. So, that was a bunch of commands rapid fire. I will go through them. So, but very, very important. In Windows, you don't really think of a program as executing inside of a folder, right? Programs execute inside of Windows, right? This is not entirely true. They do still execute inside of a folder. It's just Windows does a lot of work to try to hide that fact from you. In Linux, much less so. So, the way that Bash works, and most other terminals, is you will have a working or active directory within your file system. You can move that working or active directory around using some commands, and any program that you executes within the local context. So if you're trying to open a file, what you would do is you would do one of two things. You would either navigate to the directory in which that file exists, or you would provide the path to that directory, right? So, anyway, one directory in your file system is designated as active. The active directory may be changed using the cd command. cd stands for change directory. you can see I've been doing this a whole bunch. So if you want to go up a level, it's cd ... You can see that brought me from the code folder into the 1XC3 summer folder. ls lists all of the things in the directory. So you can see I've got several folders. Folders are in blue. Image files are in purple. So if I want to go into slides, I go change directory slides. Tab is autocomplete. So if you're if you're entering anything with a name inside of the file system, all you have to do is hit tab, and it should autocomplete it if it's unique, the thing that you're spelling out. Like for example, if I change directory to topic what? Topic 3. Okay, there we go. You can autocomplete. So ... is up a directory. If you want to re-enter a previously entered command, you can scroll through the previous commands entered using the arrow keys, up and down arrow keys. Extremely useful. Cool. Here are a whole bunch of actual bash commands. So cat, let's see, let me get into, slides topic 1, slides / topic 1. There we go. So let's say I wanted to view the contents of tubes.jpg, or cat tubes.jpg, and this is what a JPEG looks like. JPEGs are not a plain text format, so you can see this is a bunch of random garbage. It looks like random garbage, but if you read it as a JPEG, it's an image file. So that's what view file does. Cat. CD changes working directory. CP copies a file. So let me get into code. I think this is better if we do it in code. All right. Make dir topic 1. Make dir topic 1. There we go. CD topic 1. There we go. Now we're in the topic 1 folder. I'm going to make a file. Touch just updates the date stamp, but it'll also create a file if it doesn't exist. So test.txt. There we go. So if I want to copy it, cp test.txt to copied.txt. And you can see we now have copied and test both existing. ls, again, lists directory contents. Man shows you, man is short for manual, so if you want the man page on ls, for example, it'll tell you how ls works. There are man pages for all of the commands. And these are comprehensive, so a man page contains all the information on how to use any particular command. So if, for example, you read this, you'll find if you provide the flags LA, you will get a listing of all hidden files as well as what their read and write permissions are, which is kind of cool. So the way that commands work in general is you type a command name. If you do dash and then a letter, that's called including a flag, and that basically sets options. So L shows you, the read-write permissions. A displays hidden files. In Unix, anything with a dot in front of it is a hidden file. So I know I'm throwing a lot of information at you. Hypothetically, you should be following along and trying on your own bash shell, but probably a lot of you don't have one yet. So make dir makes a directory. Done that already. PS lists processes. PWD outputs current working directory. So you can see that is my current output that is the current working directory. RM is remove. RM test .text, and it's gone. If you want to remove directories, you either use rmdir or rm flagged with rm-r, which stands for recursive. And grep searches file contents. So if I were to go up and search for grep ra search file contents, you can see that this this phrase search file contents exists inside of the file topic1 shell basics.txt, which is the source file from which this presentation was generated. So there you go. How do you switch from hard drives so that you can change directory from C drive to E drive? Ooh, that's a, Oh, you've got me. You've got me. I do not know. I do not know. But that's the beautiful thing about Linux, is you can just look it up. So, bash change disk label. Oh, no. Change working directory. No. Bash mount drive. I think it's mount. Yeah, so you'll find C and E drive, that's Windows speak. In Linux, you'd be talking about dev/s, like SDBA or SA or S something. Like, the drive naming convention is very different. Mount, I believe that, like, to access another drive, you have to mount that drive onto the current one. I believe that's how it works. So, yeah, I don't know. I'll take a look at it. I'll get back to you on that. But anyway, mount. I'm pretty sure it's mount. So, Secure Shell Protocol. We're going to talk about network protocols. The Secure Shell Protocol is a network protocol for secure remote login over insecure networks. A network protocol is an agreed-upon format for information transition. Anything but military-grade intranet should be considered insecure, and even then. So if you guys didn't know about how, like, organizations that require advanced security work, generally speaking, they have an intranet as opposed to an internet. That is to say, there is a network protocol that connects all of their computers together, which, you know, generally speaking, you know, again, I'm not super, I don't super know how it works, because they, you know, they do in some cases connect to the internet to transfer their intranet data packets, but it's just a really high degree of security, like with probably end-to-end encryption and all kinds of stuff like that. But anyway, have to not tell military secrets. So in short, you, the client, open a shell on the remote server. So when you SSH into pascal.cast.mcmaster.ca, you are opening up a bash terminal. You will get a terminal. It'll look like this. But that bash terminal will be running on the server's system. So that's what makes it remote login. This is the way that Putty accesses I was supposed to insert the server name. Pascal.cast.mcmaster.ca. It just gives you a nice little GUI for entering the connection details. So, again. So this is this is our ooey gooey gooey. So this is what a Putty configuration session looks like. Host name, that's pascal.cast.mcmaster.ca. You usually don't have to worry about the port number. Anyway, so the point of this course is for you to gain computer skills. The most important computer skill is knowing when and how to look things up. When in doubt, consult the documentation. So that's kind of I'm going to say it right now. The attitude that we are going to take towards you, the students, in this course, is we're going to expect you to have Googled stuff before you ask us stuff. And I know it's like, if you need help finding information, that's one thing. But if your question is, how do I install Putty? That's like, if you can't figure it out from, if you can't figure it out, Google it, right? Putty will have documentation on how it should be installed. The point of this course is that you should get used to the idea that you are the computer professional, which means you're the person people come to with this type of problem, which means you need to be the person who knows how this stuff works. And in order to know how this stuff works, you need to be able to find the information you need. And this is an experiential course, so you're going to have to find stuff out for yourself sometimes. It's a little bit harsh, but that's the way it is. We're trying to train you. We're trying to train you to become self-sufficient and independent. That being said, if you are genuinely having a tough time, come talk to either myself or the TAs. We're not ogres, but, probably the first question that we have for you is going to be, well, did you manage to find the documentation? And given that you know now what the way to access the documentation for any command in Bash is, using man, finding the manual, that's probably not going to be too much of an excuse. Although man pages can be somewhat difficult to read. So, use the source, Luke. The source in this case meaning the documentation. So, I have no need for a protocol droid. Other common network protocols include Ethernet, Internet Protocol, or IP, Transmission Control Protocol. If you've heard of TCP/IP, that's like a combo of these two protocols together. Hypertext Transfer Protocol, HTTP, and Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol, DHCP, which is used by routers to automatically configure wireless networks or other networks. Network protocols typically define the construction of data packets which are transferred by the network. In the same way that a JPEG is only a JPEG because it has all of the JPEG stuff in the correct places for it to be interpreted as a JPEG, packet formats have the same property. They have stuff in particular orders, and the receiving entity expects things in those orders, and if the protocol is adhered to, then everybody's happy. So, the header may contain different information depending on the protocol, such as the size of the packet, the source and destination of that packet, and security features like checksums. Oh, in general, the data packet consists of a header followed by some data. So, this is the header organization for an Internet Protocol version 6 data packet, which is what a lot of internet traffic exists in. So you can see we've got all kinds of different information. It's assigned according to bit size. So the header for a IPv6 data packet is always the same size. In general, the exact construction of data packets isn't something you need to worry about unless you're a network specialist or an electrical engineer. I just thought it might be interesting for you, since SSH is a SSH is a network protocol, so it's another one of these types of things. Cool. So, last slide comic. Thank you for calling the Black Hat support line your first secure source for Linux support, how may I assist? Hi, I'm running an Apache server and the load keeps climbing out of control. Okay, first click on the start menu. I'm sorry, this is the Linux helpline, right? Of course, sir. If you'll just open the My Documents folder. Just a minute. I think you're putting me on. Please bear with me, sir. Now load up your AOL and go to the keyword Linux. Click. That's just funniness. I hope you appreciated that. But yeah, and credits for the slides. So, are there any questions? If you're good, thumbs up. If not, please ask your question. Otherwise, I'm going to try to stick to the thing where we let out 10 minutes early because we didn't have a break. So, yeah. Are there any questions? Would I recommend just getting Bash on Windows or a VM? It kind of depends. It depends on whether you want the full Linux experience or not. I think that there's enormous educational value in having an actual... oh, I'm talking here. Silence! Thank you. So... even if you set up Linux on a virtual machine, it'll still go through the process of installing Linux on the virtual machine. So it's extreme, like, doing Linux on a virtual machine, you'll learn a heck of a lot more, and it'll be a little bit slower because it's running on a virtual machine, but for the type of stuff we're doing, you won't even notice. Like, it doesn't matter. The stuff we're doing is so low level, you won't notice any latency or anything. So... my recommendation would be installing a Linux VM from scratch and using that. But if you're a busy person who's got stuff to do, getting the Windows subsystem for Linux, that would also be a perfectly acceptable way of going about it. Yeah. Also, logging in with SSH, also a perfectly acceptable way of going about it. I don't care how you get Bash, but you need Bash. It's just, you know, are you also learning a little bit of Linux on the side? Kind of question. Are there any other questions? Yeah, actually, that wouldn't be a bad idea. Like, it would be interesting to know both, you know? Because the thing about software tools is there's always a trade-off, you know? There's always advantages and disadvantages. And unless you've actually tried both tools, you probably aren't going to have a good idea. Like, you won't have a solid idea of what the advantages or disadvantages are. So really, like, try stuff out. Try stuff out. That's the point of your education, is that you tried stuff out. Yep. So anyway, next lecture, which is tomorrow, we'll be talking about version control systems. I'm expecting you to submit everything through version control this semester, so we should cover it early. It makes sense to cover it now, as opposed to at the end of the course. Again, it's a whole development philosophy. But anyway, I'm going to let you guys off here. If you have any questions, shoot me an email. Otherwise, stay healthy and stay happy, and try not to let the world get you down. Take her easy, folks.